after numerous uprisings across the Ottoman Empire were responded with barbaric slaughters by the Muslims, indiscriminately butchering men, women, and children, combatant or non-combatant alike. The great powers of Europe attempted to force reforms at the Constantinople Conference in 1876, yet the Turks vehemently refused. Enough was enough for Russia, the protector of Christians in the Ottoman Empire, igniting the Russo-Turkish War the following year, calling upon their Christian kin to rise up. So, greetings to over 65,000 Serbs and the 80% who have yet to subscribe, as we delve into the complex web of Balkan politics. Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania, already de facto independent, rallied alongside their Bulgarian brothers, joining Russia against the Ottoman yoke that had chained them for centuries. Russian armies smashed through Turkish defenses at Plevna and Shipka Pass, reaching the very gates of Constantinople. By March 1878, the Treaty of San Stefano freed Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania, birthing a ridiculously huge Bulgaria that stretched across most of Stara Serbia, the core territories of the previous Serbian Empire of Dusan the Mighty, where millions of Serbs still live to that day. This new Bulgaria, although technically still within the Ottoman Empire, was de facto a Russian puppet, destabilizing the Balkans. The Great Powers, wary of Russia's newfound client, convened the Congress of Berlin in June 1878 to restore parity between Moscow and Vienna in the Balkans. San Stefano was thrown out as Bulgaria was greatly reduced, separated from Eastern Rumelia. Yet, the Congress struck a deeper wound for Belgrade, leaving Bosnia and her millions of Serbo-Croats under Habsburg occupation, yanking Serbian aspirations southward to the contested lands of Macedonia, where the peoples had not yet developed a true national consciousness. To villagers in Prelep or Tetovo, life revolved around kin and faith, not the lines drawn by distant diplomats. Yet, the Ottomans, masters of division, had already exploited this ambiguity to weaken all sides. In 1870, they had established the Bulgarian Exarchate, a schismatic Orthodox church centered in Sofia, empowered to claim dioceses through local votes, igniting religious tensions as the Patriarch of Constantinople excommunicated the Bulgarians. Shocking absolutely no one, the nationalist ethnographers had some slight disagreements about the ethnic data in Macedonia. 2 million Serbs to 700 to 0. Yep, sounds like the Balkans. Then, looking at the Ottoman numbers, it's even less clear what the actual breakup was. In 1904, you got 1.5 million Muslims, 896,000 Bulgars, 307,000 Hellenes, and 107,000 Serbs. But just 2 years later, the numbers were completely different. Somehow, there were 400,000 less Muslims, 270,000 less Bulgarians, 300,000 more Hellenes, and now 0 Serbs. Based on that info, your guess is as good as mine for what ethnicity the Macedonians were. The 1885 Serbo-Bulgarian War, sparked by Bulgaria's unification with Eastern Rumelia, saw Russia abandon Bulgaria, pulling their officers out of the Green Bulgarian Army, hoping this would weaken it enough so the Serbs could oust Prince Alexander. Moscow was dissatisfied that Alexander had backtracked from the 1881 coup, when the constitution had been suspended, so the restoration of the constitution was seen merely as an attempt to placate nationalists and distance Sofia from Moscow. Despite this, Vienna still saw Bulgaria as a Russian client that now overstepped her place. Alexander's early loyalty to St. Petersburg had already soured Habsburg trust, and his seizure of Rumelia now threatened to fan pan-Slavic flames that could engulf Bosnia and Croatia, convincing Vienna that a powerful Bulgaria would either bow to the Tsar or plunge the Balkans into chaos. Better to curb it through their friends in Serbia. Despite vastly outnumbering the Bulgarians by more than 70,000 troops, King Milan I Obrenović, fearing a coup, only called a third of the army, and subsequently, Serbia was crushed in the war. With Bulgaria now established as a rival, inter-ethnic violence surged across Macedonia, as various ethnicities created paramilitary terrorist groups to advance their causes. Bulgarians used the Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, IMRO, Serbs set up the Chetniks, while Greece had their Hellenic Macedonian Committee, HMC. All committed numerous atrocities to one another, burning churches, schools, assassinations, killing civilians, priests, teachers, and the like. All in an attempt to somehow curry favor from the locals, while the Muslims received the brunt from all sides. Generally speaking, IMRO had the tacit toleration of the Ottoman authorities, wary of Greco-Serbian revanchism. By 1896, Bulgarian influence was heavily favored by the Sultan, as their schools in Macedonia vastly outnumbered Serbia's or Greece's. Bulgarian Comiti, armed and ruthless, roamed the countryside, torching non-exarchate churches, coercing villagers to embrace Bulgaria, often with the Ottomans looking the other way. Serbia, however, fought back. The Society of Saint Sava built schools in Skopje and Bitola, their textbooks celebrating old Serbian saints and Dusan's empire, as both Serbia and Bulgaria heavily propagandized the Macedonian Slavs to pave the way for their desired reunion with their true home, depending on if you thought it was Belgrade or Sofia. In 1903, Serbia was shaken to its core during the May coup, as King Alexander Obrenović, an Austrian lackey, was murdered by the Black Hand on June 10th. Peter Karađorđević, a Russophile, ascended the throne, cutting ties to Vienna in favor of Moscow. Thus, the Black Hand grew in power, stoking rebellion among South Slavs under Habsburg rule, planting seeds that would bear fruit in 1914. By 1912, the Ottoman Empire teetered as the Italo-Turkish War drained its strength in Libya, exposing their weakness. The Balkan League, Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and Greece struck on October 8th, crushing the Turks in the First Balkan War. The Treaty of London in May 1913 ended the conflict, but nobody was truly satisfied. The Great Powers forced an independent Albania, angering Montenegro, Serbia, and Greece, while the divisions of Macedonia were unjust to Bulgaria, who had hoped to gain the important port city of Salonika and more of the region, believing Serbs and Greeks were now occupying their kin. Thus, they foolishly kicked off the Second Balkan War in June, turning on their allies, getting crushed in little more than a month, as Romania and Turkey joined the fray. August's Treaty of Bucharest stripped Bulgaria of much of their recent gains, as they were now eager for revenge on their Balkan traitorous brethren. While Serbia, quite content with the war, now started looking northward for expansion. Nevertheless, Serbia's failures in 1885 and the subsequent struggles prevented them from truly unifying Stara Serbia, as the dream of restoring the Serbian Empire faded away. Before we continue, this video is a collaboration with Rewriting History and Just a Balkan Historian, who have their own videos on Bulgaria and Greece respectively winning the Macedonian Struggle, so make sure to check out their videos when you're done with mine. Now let's continue. History was forever changed in 1885 as King Milan, lured by Habsburg promises, took a bolder stance to Bulgaria's unification with East Rumelia. Austria-Hungary, fearing a strong Bulgaria would choke their secret designs on Salonika, likewise was more proactive, offering their own officers and supplies to guide the Serbs to victory. Thus, Milan, advised by Habsburg strategists, summoned his full might, 107,000 strong Serbs. Bulgaria's army, a mere 36,000, faltered without her Russian officers. The prince rallied his men with cries of national glory, but whispers of betrayal sapped their resolve. On November 28th, the Battle of Karabrod erupted. Serbian columns smashed the Bulgarian flanks with relentless fire. Alexander's counterattacks crumbled, his troops harried by Serbian Chetniks. After a few more Serbian victories, they had opened the path to Sofia, which fell by mid-December, as Serbian banners flew atop the royal palace. True to the plan, Russia and Austria publicly jumped in before Serbia got any wild ideas. Eastern Rumelia was separated from Bulgaria, returned to autonomous Ottoman rule. While Serbia gained slivers of land along the Timok and Nisava, a modest price to satiate Milan's pride. With Bulgaria now a weakened vassal, Serbia crucially got her exarchate limited to only Bulgaria and Eastern Rumelia. with Ottoman forces driving it underground in Macedonia. The Sultan, still weary of Hellenic ambitions, thus balanced favor between the leaders of the churches of Belgrade, Sofia, and Constantinople, to prevent one from gaining too much sway. Prince Alexander, blamed for the loss, abdicated in February 1886, hounded by Russian-orchestrated protests and liberal scorn, as Bulgaria's throne found no eager takers, until the inept and effeminate Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg, a Habsburg-linked Silesian, eventually took the crown in July 1887, weak enough for both Austria and Russia. With glory forged in victory, Milan had Habsburg backing to refuse the 1888 constitution, though it took more efforts to balance liberal reforms with martial pride. His army, sharpened by Austrian drills, gleamed with Viennese steel, while his son, Alexander, wed Princess Alexandra Caroline of Schaumburg-Lippe, a good German match strengthening accords with Berlin. No palace coups darkened the Obrenović line, as nationalists were pleased with the leadership. Instead, with Serbia's gaze turned on Macedonia, irredentist dreams of Dusan the mighty's Serbian Empire burned. Thus, the Black Hand was never formed. Austria's ambitions also unfurled, with a plan from Minister Kali envisioning an Austrian-controlled railway linking Bosnia to Salonika, its ports promising wealth and control, granting Habsburg serious economic power, and would essentially cement Western Balkans as their sphere away from Russia. However, some Serbs were apprehensive over the growing reliance upon the Danubian monarchy for economic, diplomatic, and military support, questioning where Milan's loyalties lie. With de facto control over Novi Pazar, Austria ensured Serbo-Montenegrin ties remained poor to prevent pan-Serb unity taking place. Nicola I, clutching Russian rubles, dreamed of ruling all Serbs, his court a nest of czarist plots. His daughter Zorka's marriage to Peter Karađorđević fueled tensions as the Karađorđević family had a centuries-old blood feud with the Obrenovićes. Serbia saw itsy-bitsy Montenegro as ripe for annexation, when Nicola schemed to dominate Belgrade himself. Macedonia, meanwhile, began to lean away from Sofia towards Belgrade. Propaganda of the new Serbian Golden Age, an effective Neo-Serbian empire, was efficacious with the locals. Bulgaria's defeat left Ferdinand's rule impotent, his exarchate schools and churches fading as Greco-Serb violence, unofficially funded by Athens and Belgrade, outpaced the IMRO, who simply didn't have the funds or resources to compete with the HMC and Chetniks while still scheming over Eastern Rumelia. By the spring of 1897, rebellion swept Crete's rocky shores as Orthodox insurgents, stirred by Greece, revolted against Ottoman rule. The revolt, ignited in Charnia's narrow streets, shook the Turks, already weakened by distant wars and internal strife, as Athens then declared war. Making matters worse for Sultan Abu Ahmed II, Bulgaria, still smarting from its 1895 defeat, pressed to reclaim Eastern Rumelia. Russia, eager to rebuild ties to their former Balkan friend, pressured the Sultan with Black Sea squadrons as a secret Austro-Russian pact emerged by March. Russia allowed Austria to annex Bosnia, while she gained Bulgaria into her sphere. Serbia, eager for glory, saw Crete's uprising as a call to arms. On April 10th, King Milan declared war on the Ottomans, his army aiming for Skopje, the very heart of Dusan's mighty empire, and a vital economic crossroads for the Balkans. And, if God was with them, perhaps Macedonia too. However, the war progressed poorly for the Hellenes, being crushed by Ottoman forces in Thessaly and Crete. But Serbia swept into the Kosovo Vilayet with a fierce resolve, outmatching the Turkish garrisons. The Ottomans, stretched thin by the Hellenes and Bulgarians as well, crumbled against Serbia's disciplined advance as Skopje was reclaimed by May. The Great Powers, fearing wider Balkanness, intervened in June, forcing the Treaty of Constantinople on the warring powers. Bulgaria unified with their compatriots in Rumelia, although still under Ottoman suzerainty officially. Greece surrendered scraps of Sicily, its dreams of Epirus and Crete broken for now. Crete gained de facto independence in the newfound Cretan state under Prince George of Greece. But Serbia walked away with most of the Kosovo Vilayet, avenging the Battle of Kosovo from many, many years ago. However, Russia refused to give Serbia the whole thing, leaving many of their brethren to suffer under the Sultan's shackles, as doing so would have cut off Novi Pazar, inevitably leading to a Habsburg annexation, perhaps paving the way for a Viennese conquest of Montenegro and a dreaded dash on Salonika, leaving no checks on Austria in the Balkans. Shocking nobody, the Habsburgs played this up to the highest degree, painting this as some sort of satanic Russo-Turkish plot, worsening ties between Belgrade and Moscow. Skopje's capture, though, was a massive triumph for Serbian propaganda. Tales were spun of Dusan's spirit blessing the Obrenović line. The city's bustling markets became the cornerstone of Serbia's irredentist vision. Its Vardar routes teased the Aegean wealth of Salonika, where the rich ports handled shipments from Asia, Egypt, and India. Finally, Milan was no longer seen as Vienna's puppet, but a true Serbian hero. His victories over Bulgaria and now Turkey proved his strength, with some even calling him Dusan II. In reality, he was still essentially an Austrian puppet. And to tighten his grip, Franz Joseph orchestrated the unification of the Serbian Orthodox Church. However, instead of under the Metropolitan of Belgrade, it was under the Patriarchate of Karlovci, the pro-Habsburg see formed back in 1848. So Serbian bishops subtly swayed their flocks to see Vienna in a positive Christian light. Bulgaria drifted deeper into Moscow's embrace as Russian advisors and funds rebuilt Sofia's army, but its Macedonian hopes were weak at best, as Serbia had done so much to win the Macedonians to her cause since 1885. Russia, solely focused on Aegean ports, saw Thrace as a much likelier outcome, and hoped to rebuild ties with Serbia in time, so they ignored Sofia's Macedonian pleas, content to use Bulgaria as a check on Ottoman and Habsburg power. In spite of that, Ferdinand, fearing a nationalist coup, gave the green light for the Ilinden-Probejani uprising in 1903, hoping to prove to the Macedonians that Bulgaria could fight off the Turks just as well as those dumb Serbs. Unfortunately for Bulgaria, IMRO was completely over their heads with the scheme, as the Turks put down the revolt in a matter of days. So Bulgaria didn't really change the narrative on their incompetency, as this only furthered pro-Serbian sentiments. 5 years later, it was the Turks who revolted in the Young Turk Revolution, providing the perfect cover for Austria to annex Novi Pazar, while Bulgaria finally declared her independence from the Sultan. In 1912, with the Ottomans weakened by war with Italy, the Balkan states knew the time was right for war, forming the Balkan League: Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and Greece. The Great Balkan War eventually broke out in October as the Turks were hammered on all fronts. Serbia struck out across Macedonia from Skopje, with her troops surging along the Vardar, shattering Turkish lines as Salonika's harbors fell to Belgrade, just days before the Hellenes could arrive. A bitter blow to Athens. The Serbs then quickly moved out to claim as much land as possible, while the Greeks dominated the Aegean. Concomitantly, Bulgaria moved into Thrace, devastating the Turks as they reached the gates of Constantinople. Montenegro's poorly trained levies struggled against the Albanian tribes in Shkodr's rugged hills, so Serbia, pushed by Vienna, arrived to bail out Nikola's failing campaign, seizing northern Albanian Christian enclaves in Mirdita, arming them before marching south and occupying almost all of Albania. By May 1913, Adrianople had fallen, and the great powers, worried about a Russian client taking the Dardanelles, stepped in to force terms at the Treaty of London. Bulgaria gained most of Thrace, up to the Enos-Medea line, but were displeased that Serbia had completely froze them out of Macedonia, taking away almost the entire region for herself, including Salonika, where Austria received a port and began railway construction immediately. Greece received Crete, all Aegean islands, and Chalkidiki, but were also vexed over Macedonia. They were not alone in their disappointment, as Serbian aspirations for the Adriatic coast were dashed as Albania was formed as a principality at the insistence of the great powers to limit the reach of Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece, angering all three, but especially Montenegro, who was left with nothing to show for the war. Nonetheless, none of the three were in a position to challenge the great powers, as William of Wied accepted the role as Prince of Albania, but was almost immediately met with troubles in Durazzo. Being the Balkans, despite the treaty, Athens couldn't stomach leaving over 200,000 Greeks to suffer under Muslim rule, so they encouraged the creation of the Autonomous Republic of Northern Epirus to hopefully enable their transfer home in due time. Serbia too refused this Albanian affront, propping up the Merdita Christians to form the Republic of Merdita. Making matters worse, the Muslim majority refused to accept a Christian as a leader, so revolts erupted in Elbasan and Tirana, while Esad Pasha, Wilhelm's chief minister, led a coup backed by Italian gold that ended up assassinating the prince. By May 1914, leaderless Albania crumbled. Russia pushed for a Russian prince to take the throne, hoping to provoke an Austrian invasion. But Austria, supported by Germany, blocked the Russian machination. Despite that success, rising tensions between Greece and Serbia threatened the Salonika Railway, so Vienna sullenly approved Albania's partition at the Treaty of Zara, where Greece and Serbia allied together and agreed to mediate border disputes by the Habsburgs. Additionally, they both agreed to back Greek claims to Constantinople and Anatolia. That would be much better for Vienna than it falling under Bulgaria. Shortly thereafter, Serbian and Greek forces overran the war-torn Albanians, dividing the territory between themselves. Austria gained another naval base here at Vlore, securing the Adriatic, a move that irked Germany, who had their own designs in Albania. Ultimately, the Balkans were completely changed by the war. True to their historical plans, Serbia, Greece, and Bulgaria had an inhuman series of ethnic cleansings as millions of Muslims, Turks, Albanians, Circassians, and Bosniaks fled or died, their villages burned. For the Christians or sparse Muslims who remained, assimilation followed. Mosques toppled, names changed, and children taught Serbian, Greek, or Bulgarian customs and legends. When the carnage finally settled down, Serbia stood as the unrivaled power in the Balkans, its army supreme, its church unified, and its people whole. Or at least, that's what Obrenović propaganda would have you believe. Despite their momentous victory, the price was high, with tens of thousands of their boys dead and terrible relations with their Slavic kin in Montenegro, Bulgaria, and Russia. While the king had become shackled in a Viennese golden cage, refusing to look north. Only then could he truly claim to unify his people. He must free them from the oppressive hands of the Habsburgs. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and consider supporting me on Patreon to get ad-free viewing, all the maps from the videos, and more. These are only possible thanks to my patrons' generous support. Make sure to watch here to see Rewriting History's video on Bulgaria winning the Macedonian Struggle, or Just a Balkan Historian's video on Greece winning the struggle. You guys will definitely enjoy them. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.